There's a saying that applies to many things in life, and that saying is save the best until last, and that may be what the Philadelphia Eagles did when they signed 29-year-old inside linebacker Zach Brown to a one-year deal worth just $1.5 million. The former Redskins and Titans linebacker was still a free agent after the NFL draft, despite posting 96 tackles in 2018 and battling what felt like a season-long injury. The Eagles, who failed to address the position in the NFL draft, but did add LJ Fort into the mix alongside with the return of Paul Warrilow, decided to take a flyer on Brown for a deal that seems like extremely good value. But the question is, can Zach Brown move from a 3-4 defense to a 4-3, and what does he bring to this Jim Schwartz defense? My name is Liam Jenkins, and this is another episode of Eagles Film Room. Before we get started though guys, make sure you leave a like and hit subscribe if you enjoy this sort of content. We are so close to 10,000 subscribers and we need your help getting over that final hump. And as always, don't forget you can get daily dosage of Philadelphia sports content at our website phillysportsnetwork.com. We're going to start out of course by looking at his strengths, and there is no stronger part of his play than his run defense. According to Pro Football Focus, he made the third most defensive stops against the run over the last 3 seasons. And he also has claim to the 11th best run stop percentage and 8th best run defense grade over that time for all the Pro Football Focus lovers out there. And when you turn on the tape, I ended up watching 5 games of Zach Brown. It's really easy to see why. He's not the prototypical linebacker of old, but he has got the athletic traits to be an absolute demon in the right scheme. And when it comes to containing those outside runs like we saw just then, he's a monster. And in this 3-4 defense, he was able to just run and shoot the gaps at will. He won't be able to do that as much in Philadelphia because that's where the defensive linemen come in. But when asked to blitz and get into the backfield, he is an absolute machine. We'll take a look at this play right here. Jason Peters may be overset, but the bend that Zach Brown has to cut back inside, find that hole, and then bring down Josh Allen, that's impressive. That is like a defensive end or an outside linebacker level bend. You don't see that from inside guys very often. But make no mistake, he also has the strength. He pushes the pile here right into the path of Josh Adams, and here's another play where he reads the run game well and just goes head first into tight end Jack Doyle. He just meets that head on with what's called a juice technique. Now this has different names depending if you're a blocker or tackler or simply where you pick up the lingo, but what it essentially means is that your lead shoulder would correlate with the opposition's lead foot. So if it's the outside shoulder that you need to lead with, it's because it's their outside foot that's ahead and dictating their path. What it does is almost neutralize any physical advantage the other player has because it's a stalemate. It's literally rock meets iron. There's no way that there's going to be some undercutting advantage. And tackling from the ground up, his technique is so crisp, and it's easy to see why the 2016 Pro Bowler has over 96 tackles in each of his last 3 seasons, and this is what is so stellar against the run as well. Partner that with this level of instinct. Watch him snuff out this play against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There is a lot of movement at the line of scrimmage. Brown stays light, keeps his eyes pinned in the backfield. The running back is all over the place, and Brown just does not overcommit, does not oversell, and dives straight back into the hole to clog the lane and bring down a crucial tackle for a loss. There's also his strength as well. Again, look at that's exactly what I'm talking about with that juice technique. The lead shoulder meets head on like a jigsaw puzzle and neutralizes that. There's no way he's going to get out muscled. Now against offensive linemen, sometimes he can get carried up the field a little bit, but it's not the end of the world, and in a 4-3 you're not going to see it as much. But with little shifty maneuvers like that, someone that's so light on his feet when asked to press into the backfield, when asked to maybe carry the run outside and quite often be lined up in man coverage against these running backs, it is so impressive to see Brown in every single game just become this force to be reckoned with. And what you see is teams almost try and run the opposite way. This was just a mismatch. Somehow somebody's not accounted for and Zach Brown can just storm into the backfield on a 4th and 1 and bring down Josh Adams. But what you see is teams running the opposite direction, especially in those Jacksonville and New Orleans games. They wanted to run the opposite way because when they do, you just get strong tackling like you see there against the Saints at the goal line, making a key stop. Now in terms of what we could see here with the Eagles, when they run those diamond nickel packages where maybe it's Malcolm Jenkins on the field, if you keep Jenkins on one side and either Bradham or Brown on the other, what it's going to lead to is more backside pursuits. They're of course going to run the ball in the direction of Malcolm Jenkins as opposed to what we see against Zach Brown. This means that Brown Brown has got the freedom to go sideline to sideline, which is his other strength. Now, some people say that Brown looked to lose a step last year, or that he wasn't as impactful going sideline to sideline, but if we're brutally honest, if you're playing with a torn oblique muscle through the entire year, you can kind of understand why it's a little bit harder to run, but that still didn't stop Brown from looking like a total machine. This is an open field tackle against the Buccaneers. He sits in coverage and waits, and at this point, look how far away it's that little running back just sneaking out of the backfield on the 50-yard line on the Bucs logo, and now he has to cover over half the field and still does so to bring him down. Again, this is the sort of thing you can expect to see with the Philadelphia Eagles. He's lined up over the middle. I can't see them playing him outside over Bradham. It's just he's keeping eyes in the backfield and then immediately bursts to the ball, and even there takes a strong angle, same technique, brings down the runner, nice and simple. This is another really strong example against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Cody Kessler, conveniently enough, decides to take the check down, and Brown closes to the ball like a man possessed. It's that homing missile mentality. It's easy to see why Jim Schwartz would be impressed with this. There's another example of that against the Indianapolis Colts. We'll roll this one back just because I think this is interesting again. Starting in the middle, just watch number 53, keeps his eyes pinned on the running back all the way through, sees when he's moving his body to receive, and then takes a really nice angle. It's the juice mentality again, keeping that inside shoulder, puzzle fitting with the running back, brings him down at a halt. Now, this is an interesting one. Look at him pick up Corey Clement out of the backfield, follow him all the way back down the sideline, over the top, has to take the Golden Tate check down underneath. Nice coverage there from Zach Brown, and that is something again which was criticised. We'll get to that a bit later on. What about his efforts in those open field situations? It's just the hustle that you see that you don't see from many other places. Here's another play against the Eagles. He wraps up Alshon Jeffrey like a Christmas present on this play, drops back a bit nice. He can get a bit flat-footed in coverage, which is something you do see occasionally. But then there are other times, and there are plays like this, which are my absolute favourite. There is no better Zach Brown play in 2018 than this, if you ask me. He's covering the curl and flat area of the field, so it's zone coverage. He steps out, stays ahead of the running back. Now, Ryan Fitzpatrick actually scrambles on here, and who makes a tackle? It's Zach Brown, and he doesn't just hustle to the ball, but he takes such a strong tackling angle. You have to watch Brown so closely on this play. Just watch it again. He's got his eyes focused purely on the running back. Fitz steps out. Brown's got his back now. He's keeping his eyes pinned on the ball. Just kind of loops over the top of Fitzpatrick to come over the top as an in-front blocker and then bring him down. That is high-level football IQ. Instead of just meeting him head-on or going laterally to the football, to actually loop over the top, that's a really strong sort of play and something the Eagles could really benefit from. Here's another example of that speed from against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He drops back here, and at this point, there's around 8 or 9 yards between himself and where he's got to close to make this tackle, and he does it in a blink of an eye, around a couple of seconds. To be expected, this has been a staple of Brown's game for so long, but here's a better view of that click and close. It's almost cornerback level play. He wraps up Zach Ertz, and again, he's a step behind, outside foot, outside shoulder, brings down Zach Ertz. There's that technique I was on about earlier on. Here's another highlight from that Indianapolis Colts game, however, where he closes onto the ball. It's a mesh concept underneath, and he just waits and bides his time. Now, again, he's not someone I'd ideally want to isolate in press coverage or zone situations. He can get a little bit flat-footed. There's a nice positioning section here against the Buccaneers where he gets outside and stays over the top, but there were other games, especially that Saints one where we will get to it shortly, where he's just not quite as fluid in his movement. If he's not matched up in man coverage against a tight end or against a running back like we've seen in many of these clips, he can end up flat-footed. And here's an example. He misses a chance to really jump in the way of that ball. His ball skills are by no means a strength. This is not Jordan Hicks, who was a borderline DB at times. He can often just get flat-footed, stuck in the mud, and by that point, he's almost leaping vertically, and he's not going to get it. He can get a little bit too deep. Here's another example there. He's a little bit further behind Michael Thomas, who takes full advantage of this matchup. One of the best route runners in the game. Doesn't put him on skates. He freezes him in the spot. It's quite the inverse, and Brown just can't get out. He gets a little bit too stuck, his feet glued to the turf, and we've seen that a couple of times. Here's another example against Michael Thomas. This was a matchup that the Saints really wanted to reap the rewards out of. He has to run the long way round. It's such an easy 1-2 route for Drew Brees to complete. Now, again, if you put him in man coverage situations against tight ends and running backs where he has inside leverage, he's going to win them the majority of the time. Look at this route against Jack Doyle. He's actually lined up in press in the slot, which is a rarity for an inside linebacker, but he does well. He jams at the line, feels his way down the route. It's a comeback. He gets over the top of it. Nice and simple. In zone or situations where he has to read and react, he's sometimes a little bit slow to process what's going on. The mental processing isn't his best friend. If he's not shooting a gap or has a direct man assignment, there are lapses in concentration. For instance, here he just presses a bit too deep to the line of scrimmage. It opens a massive window for Fitzpatrick, but this is the clip that scares me. We saw it a couple times during his last few seasons as well, but everyone else is like a couple of steps into their progression before Brown even moves, and everyone else has reacted, but Brown just feels stuck in the mud. Now luckily Andrew Luck targets Jack Doyle there, but Marlon Mack was out and he was running a wheel route. He was wide open down the sideline. Here's an example against the Jacksonville Jaguars though, where he is shooting a gap, because that speed, that instinctive play, that just 0 to 100 factor can be absolutely game changing. So if you're gonna sit him back in zone situations, he can be liable to get stuck in the mud. He doesn't have the mental processing to really be a factor in those instances, especially the ball skills that you're going to lose out in Jordan Hicks, but he does bring something else to the table, which is raw speed, raw athleticism, and a little bit of tackling prowess as well. Now, given the amount of tackling issues we saw in this secondary especially, this is someone that can get outside and mop up the running backs. I mentioned prolifically that Ronald Darby is not a good tackler. He struggles massively, and that could be a huge problem when coming up against running backs and that sort of thing, because when you get to screens and passes out of the flat, there's just a little bit too much leeway and quarterbacks can pick their poison. If you've got this sort of linebacker who can go sideline to sideline, you've got Malcolm Jenkins on the other side, it neutralizes that threat and it lets Ronald Darby concentrate on the task in hand. So I love it, and look at this, he absolutely brutalizes Stefan Wisniewski to the ground on this play. This is what you didn't get in Jordan Hicks, someone that can make this sort of impact. And look at the power, Wisniewski sliding along the floor into the ground. It's a bowling ball, it's a strike for Zach Brown, a sack on Carson Wentz. There's a nice quarterback hit as well. He can be used as a blitzer. So all in all, this is a linebacker who is going to massively impact a run defense that slipped a little bit in 2018 after being the league's best just 1 year before in that Super Bowl winning campaign. It's a linebacker that is really going to go sideline to sideline, maybe replacing a hybrid of what the team lost in Michael Kendricks as well, but you don't want to sit him back in zone coverage. That is where LJ Fort, Cameron Hill and Paul Warrilow really come in. But for $1.5 million, this could be the signing of the offseason. Let me know what you think, guys, down in the comments. Are you excited to see Zach Brown play? Leave a like, hit subscribe, drop your thoughts below. From myself, Liam Jenkins, you can follow me on Twitter at LiamJenkins21. And as always, PhillySportsNetwork.com is where you can find the work from myself and all of our writers every single day.